Hi there everyone, Josiah here with Womprat Creations, and it is time for the fourth Fett Lineage Project installment. And so we went through two concept design helmets. We went through the Super Trooper, which is the first physical prototype that was made of Boba Fett. Now we start to get into some really fun paint jobs. Today I'm going to be painting the pre-production 1 Boba Fett helmet. And so basically what happened is they had the all-white Super Trooper helmet. They showed it to George Lucas and some other people involved with the production. They gave some notes, and from what I can tell, they liked the overall structure of it, but Boba started to evolve as a character. He started to move away from being an elite stormtrooper or part of the Empire, and he got his own identity as a bounty hunter. So that means that they needed to make him look less Empire. So they needed to get away from the all-white paint job. Now we start to get into some really fun paint jobs, and there are significant differences between this and what we end up seeing in the movies, and there's even a couple iterations after this before we even get into anything movie. So I already, like I said in the last video, the castings that I'm going to be using going forward from the last one, including this, is from Grimworks Armory. It is a lovely, lovely kit. If you want to see me go into a lot of detail about all the things I really like about this kit, you can go check out the last video. The whole point of doing that last time is so that you guys don't have to listen to me talk about it every time. I'm trying to structure this so that I talk about something different every video, a different aspect of doing a Boba Fett paint up in every video, so that it doesn't get too boring, because there are a lot of these. But if you haven't already, go check out those other videos. Today, like I said, pre-production 1. This is the first variation after the all-white Super Trooper, and you can see already that there is no dent on this helmet. That being said, I do need to add some damage to this. Before they got to the eventual dent in the dome that we've all come to know and love, they had a pretty big scratch. They had a deep gouge in the helmet, and I am going to include that in my pre-production 1 helmet. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to mark out where that scratch is going to be. Then I'm going to use my Dremel with a cutoff wheel to kind of get it going. Then I'm going to go in with a file and really work that shape in nicely. And I'll tell you guys why after I do it. But that's the first thing I need to do, is I need to add some physical damage to this helmet. All right, you guys, I have my scratch in Boba's dome, and from the limited amount of, there's not a ton of reference available for this helmet. So from the limited amount of reference pictures that I have for the pre-production one, this scratch is the only real physical damage that I can see in this helmet from the pictures that I have. So that's all I'm going to be putting into it. I told you guys, well, I also showed you guys that I started this off, I marked it out so that I knew the location, and for that actually, a little tip, if you need to make a straight line on a curved surface, a little strip of styrene is perfect because it'll keep a flat line, but you can bend it over a curved surface. So that's a pretty reliable way of getting a straight line on a curved surface. So I marked out where it was, then I used my Dremel to get it going because I didn't want to just start going in with the file and end up, you know, going off at a weird angle because I didn't have a gouge set. So once I got a gouge set with the Dremel, I came in with a needle file, like a jewelry file. And the reason I did that is because from the reference pictures, I can see that the middle of the scratch is the deepest part. It's not a uniform depth of scratch through the whole thing. And that is actually, I think, a pretty realistic way to put a scratch in a helmet. It's when you're wearing your helmet and you brush against something sharp, or you're maybe something's flying at you, it's not going to perfectly match the curvature of the dome. It's going to come in more or less at a straight line. So it'll cut through more in the middle and then kind of come back out at the same angle. So it's going through the same angle the whole way. So I tried to replicate that with the file so that I kept the file at a straight angle and continued to go through until the file met both sides of my reference line so that the middle of the scratch is deeper than any of the other scratch. Hope that made sense. Let's get some metal paint on this for my base layer. Then we can get into some really fun paint stuff. All right, you guys, I have my silver base coat on there, and this is looking pretty nice and shiny and Mandalorian-like, but it is not going to stay this way. I am going to start getting into the most complex paint job up until this point. And because these paint jobs are going to become more and more complex and more important to get right, because up until now, the two concept helmets that I did, it didn't matter if I didn't have to match damage areas. I didn't have to, I had a lot of leeway with those paint jobs, so that was really easy. Then we got to the Super Trooper, and even though I was recreating something that was a little more stringent, I couldn't fudge it as much as the other two. It was still a pretty basic paint job. Now is when we start getting into the more complex paint jobs, and the way that I'm going to make sure that I get them right is I am going to use some templates. These templates are by Raphael Works over on the dented helmet, and they are a lifesaver. He put these together for every single one of the Boba Fett helmets, and this is what I'm going to be using for to make sure that I get the damage areas and stuff like that on these helmets correct. This is also the way that I've talked to you guys about props and costumes and the fact that there's usually a couple of everything made. There's a hero, which is commonly the term used for the helmet, in this case scenario a helmet, that you see the person wearing when it's an up close shot, or if they're not really doing anything, they're talking, or the hero is like the really nice helmet that's usually reserved for like the nice up close shots. Then there's other ones that are made for like stunt helmets, which are usually a little more banged up. They don't need to be as nice because they're usually used in like an action sequence. They might not even be plastic. They might be like rubber or like a softer material. The way that a production will make sure that paint jobs match for the most part between like a hero and a prop or a stunt helmet, and the way that they make sure that the paint scheme stays the same with every one is they use templates. And I'm going to show you guys how I'm going to use these templates, how I'm going to get this template onto the helmet. And for that, I'm going to be using some transfer paper. So I got my transfer paper out, and this is black. I also have some white transfer paper that I'm going to be using later on, but my other transfer paper is white, and I don't think that'll show up really well on this, enough for me to really see it. So for the silver damage that I'm going to be masking off, I'm going to use my black transfer paper just so that I know I'll be able to see it. But basically the idea is, by the way, I'm going to be starting this paint job with the key slot area. No particular reason why, other than that's just where I'm going to start. So for that, I have the keyhole area right here. It's broken up into two parts right there. And so I need to cut those out. And once I get them cut out, I can put this transfer paper onto the helmet, put the template on top of this, and then I can just draw onto the, I just use a mechanical pencil, and I can draw the outline of whatever it is that I want to transfer onto the helmet. And when I take everything off, the transfer paper will have left a black line where I was drawing. That just allows me to, like I said, make sure that I'm getting all of the damage areas correct, because with Boba Fett paint jobs, the damage is 90% of the look. You could get away with having some off colors. You could get away with a whole lot of stuff, but if you get the damage wrong, even if you get the basic shape of it right, but if it's too big or too small, it can really throw the look off. So that is why I'm using the templates, and yeah, I just got to make my life as easy as possible. Trying to approximate the paint job on this, I don't think would be giving it justice. So I'm going to be using, and by the way, this transfer paper, I've gotten some online. The white stuff that I have is from Hobby Lobby. You can find this in most hobby arts and crafts stores. Just know that when you're using transfer paper, there's usually a lighter side and then a darker side. You want to put the darker side of the paper down. I think there's a couple different types of transfer paper. I haven't found any pros or cons to either one. I think this black transfer paper is like a carbon, almost like, when you're filling out a form and they have like a pink form of a pink copy of the same form underneath, and when you press down and write on the first one, you lift it up and the same stuff is on the pink one underneath. It's that kind of deal. It's like carbon paper. I think the white transfer paper that I have is like a wax base, but it's the same idea. It all works the same. And like I said, I haven't been able to notice too much of a, really any difference between the two. So whatever you can find is probably great to use. Okay, I am going to start transferring the silver damage onto the keyhole area of my helmet. Then I'll use some masking fluid to mask those damage areas off. Then we'll move on to the next color for the key slot area, and that is a darker gray. But yeah, let's get to it. Alright you guys, I have on the back of my helmet the dark gray, and by the way, I should let you guys know that for all of these helmets going forward, I'm going to be, I've used a lot of Archive X on the other helmets, but on all of the helmets going forward, the main colors that I'm going to be using are from Archive X, and I spoke to you guys about them, I believe, in the Macquarie concept video, but they're a company out of the UK that makes model paints that are specifically designed to match old Star Wars colors. So the vintage paints that the Star Wars modelers were using, they're designed specifically to match those paints. And so those are the paints that I'm going to be using going forward. And I will even tell you what colors of Archive X I'm using on these helmets, so that it can take out some of the guesswork for you guys. So far, the silver is not an Archive X. That is just a spray paint rattle can. But the gray that I just put on, let me go grab it because I don't remember off the top of my head. All right, you guys, I got my gray down on the keyhole section on the back, and also I wanted to let you know, I should have said this earlier, but the silver obviously was just spray paint, rattle can, not super important what kind of silver you use, but I am going to be using mainly Archive X brand paints going forward. I used some of them for the previous helmets, but those are going to be my go-to paints going forward. And if you guys didn't hear me talking about them before, it's a company out of the UK that makes paints that are matched to vintage model paints that ILM was using at the time of Star Wars. So their whole gig is matching vintage paints and that were used in Star Wars. So it's about as accurate as you can get out there. I really enjoy these paints. They're enamel, so they're an oil-based paint, but it's a very high quality paint that is specifically matched to Star Wars colors, which is perfect. I will say they're not the cheapest. There are cheaper paints out there, but I actually really love these paints. They lay down really nicely. They thin with mineral spirits, and it's just really easy to work with. The reason I'm telling you that is because I'm going to make sure that going forward I tell you guys all of the paint colors that I'm using, so that you can, if you wanted to make this helmet, you could just go off of whatever paints I'm using and take the guesswork out of it. If you think I might be off a little bit, at least it gives you a reference point. But so far, the gray that I put down is 1975 SP Lark DK Gray. That will be the main gray that I'm using throughout this helmet for damage. Really lovely paints, but like I said, be prepared because they're not the cheapest out there, but they work really well. So, that aside, I got my gray on there. I'm going to keep the silver damage that I already masked off with the masking fluid. I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to touch it. If you accidentally peel up some of the masking, it's not going to be the end of the world. You can go back and remask over it with more masking fluid, but in my experience, you're never going to get it just right. So if you can, leave the masking fluid on there. I'm going to transfer over my gray damage on top of that. I'll mask that off with some masking fluid. Then, because foundation is FYI, the next color I'm going to be using, that's the last color on this one. Once I put that down and that dries, I can peel off all the masking fluid and all the damage will be there. But don't take off the masking fluid prematurely. It's a pain. Don't do it. Just trust me, don't do it. But yeah, so mask off the gray damage and then I'll head over there and put on some foundation. All right, you guys, I have my final color in the key slot area, and now that everything is dry, I can go in and remove the liquid masking, which is arguably the best part. So I will give you a nice close-up shot of that. But the workflow that I just showed you, so transferring the damage onto the helmet, masking it off, painting the next color, masking that off, going to the next color, that is going to be my workflow for a while. So I'm not going to break down every single one for you. I don't think anyone wants to see that. I am going to still list all of the paint colors for the different layers and different areas that I'm doing, so that you guys can write those down if you want. But I think after I remove the masking fluid, I think we're just going to go into a big long time lapse of me going through, and then on the other side of that time lapse we're going to get into the coolest part of this helmet, which I'm very excited for. All right, you guys, that was a ton of painting, and the part that you guys couldn't really tell because I, of course, cut all those clips up and smashed them together. With every layer, I had to let every layer on this dry for, I let it dry for about 4 hours. Every layer of paint on this dried for about 4 hours, and then once every like chunk was done, like back plates, you know, cheeks, mandibles, whatever it is, once every section was done, I let that dry for about a day before masking off the next section and moving on. So this took a ton of time. The reason I did that is because if you don't let your paint cure all the way, when you go to mask over it later with masking tape to go to the next area, it could create, you can peel up the previous layers of paint, which I wasn't able to entirely eradicate. I did have a little bit of peeling on this, which is super frustrating, but it happens. Unfortunately, you just have to go back and repaint over those areas, which, like I said, on this one was not a big deal. It was pretty small areas, so it wasn't too big of a deal. But it took a long time to paint this helmet to this point, is what I'm saying. But we're not done yet. There is one last thing that two last things that I need to do to this helmet. And that is, you know, in the Joe Johnston concept, I put those bunny ear things on the front of the helmet. This helmet, the pre-production one, also has a design on the front of the helmet, but it isn't the bunny ears. Well, I'll get to that later. But I need to put eyes on this, and so I cut these out using my Cricut because it just seemed like the easiest thing. I cut these out of a stencil material, so it's made to be laid onto an object and then painted and then peeled back up. So hopefully this will not peel up any paint on this. If it does, I'm going to be very upset. But I need to put these two eyes on the front of the helmet, and then I'm going to paint. So I'm going to paint them on with some black paint. So I need to do that. Then I need to do some weathering. Yeah, so I'm going to put the eye stencils onto the helmet. I'll paint it, and then I guess I'll check it with you guys again and see where we're going from there, because, you know, I like checking in with you guys. All right, let's do the eyes. All right, you guys, I have my eyes on the helmet, and you might not be able to tell, but I will tell you straight up, they're a little wonky. That's okay with me. That reads Star Wars to me. I'm totally fine with it. It's to a small enough degree that it's not going to bother me. It feels right, and I am actually really pleased with how this is looking. The reason that I wanted to check in with you guys after I put the eyes on before I started weathering the helmet is because I've been hiding something from you. Well, actually, you guys probably know because you probably looked at the thumbnail of this video before clicking on it, and so I don't know why I bother trying to keep secrets from you guys, because you guys usually know before you even click on the video. But I've been hiding something from you. I have been hiding something from you guys through the filming of this video at least, and that is I have a whole nother helmet. I made a exact copy of this helmet, and the reason for that is because with the pre-production 1 helmet, they made this. They made this with the eyes. They did a full dress up of an actor, and we're kind of going through and seeing what worked and what didn't, what they liked and what they didn't. And very quickly after doing that first kind of dress up, they decided they wanted to get rid of the eyes and go to a different design on the helmet. So they took this helmet, rubbed off the eyes, I'm assuming with a little bit of paint thinner, and then put on a different design a little bit higher up on the helmet. But I'll actually put a side-by-side of the two. I mean, it's the same helmet, but shots of this helmet with the eyes design and then the ears design right next to it, so you guys can see what I'm talking about. You can actually see where they rubbed off the eyes on the helmet and then just painted the ears up farther up on the helmet. So that is exactly what I'm going to be doing, except I didn't want to get rid of the eyes version because I think it's cool looking, it's unique. We haven't really seen that in anything else. So I'm just going to have 2 of the same helmet, but at different points in time. So now what I need to do is airbrush the same eyes onto this helmet, rub them off, and then put the ears on farther back on the helmet. Then I'll go through and weather both helmets at the same time. That's why I wanted to check in with you guys before weathering, because I didn't want to weather one whole helmet and then have to do the same exact thing on the next one. So let's get to the designs on this helmet. All right, you guys, I put my eyes on here. I was able to get them off for the most part, actually more so than I'd like, but with some paint thinner and some alcohol and stuff like that. I was able to rub them off and kind of smear the little bit of paint that stayed on. And then I put my ears down. And I'm pretty happy with the way these are looking, but there's one other thing that I almost forgot that was added to the helmet after the initial wearing with the eyes, and that is kill stripes. The kill stripes are those, they've been in both Boba Fett helmets in both movies. They change colors between movies, but they're the stripes, the little tick marks that go around the side of the helmet here those are kill stripes. Those are like little marks of like past bounties and stuff like that. So in between, when they changed this helmet to have the eyes, they also threw in some kill stripes. So what I need to do now is go through, mask those kill stripes off, mask off some of the damage, because they didn't just paint the kill stripes on top of the damage. They made sure to try to kind of incorporate that into the paint job. So I need to mask off the kill stripes, use some liquid masking to mask off the damage. Then I'll paint those. Then we can dirty both of these up, and I'll actually be able to darken up the smudges here where the eyes were just a little bit, because in person I can actually see it fairly well, but I know that with these harsh lights you guys can't really see them right now. So I'll end up darkening those up a little bit. But kill stripes, then we're gonna do some dirtying up of both of these helmets. All right, you guys, I am done. I am done with these two helmets, and man, this was a tough one. I think just because there are two, and trying to match up damage between two helmets, even with stencils, can be a challenge. Let alone the challenge of masking over paint and peeling paint back off by accident. It can be a real chore. So I am glad to be done with these, but not so much because I hated the process, just because I have two new Fett helmets to add to my collection. These are pretty cool. I like these helmets. The pre-production 1 helmets are, they're unique. They're unique because it's the first time that we start to get to the color palette of what eventually ends up being Fett. In fact, we're almost there, essentially. From the limited amount of reference pictures that are available for these helmets, there are more available for this one than there are for this, before they rubbed off the eyes and stuff like that. But from my reference pictures, from what I can tell, and it could just be a trick of the light, but the green looked a little bluer to me than we see on later Boba Fett's, which is, I'm sorry that I'm not able to give you a exact formula for the greenish blue that I got, but it was just really by eye. I tried to keep some kind of sense to it, but I ended up getting lost in that, so I'm sorry I can't give you an exact ratio of the paints that went into making this kind of bluish green, but I'm pretty pleased with it. And the first thing that I'll do is, we'll forget about the later version of the helmet for a second, and I have to grab my step stool, but I'll pull down the Super Trooper helmet and we'll look at them side by side, although these two, while they are the same base, essentially have nothing more in common than that. But we'll go ahead and pull it down. Okay, so here is my Super Trooper helmet, and as we can see, like I said, almost, I'll go ahead and say, nothing at all in common paint-wise other than the colors of the arrows in the front. That's essentially the only thing that stayed consistent from this to this. That and the rangefinder. The rangefinder is a metallic stock with a black top with 2 red LEDs and a viewfinder inside of it. That's essentially the only things, like I said, besides the base shape of the helmet, that stayed the same. You can see that they started to play around with physical damage. We added this deep scar scratch into the top, which I actually really like. But other than that, I mean, you can see that at some point between this and this, they said, okay, Boba is no longer a elite stormtrooper. He has his own identity and we need some color on it. So they threw a bunch of color on it. I mean, just, they started playing around with damage. There isn't a ton of damage on the top of the dome on either one of these helmets. At least not as much as we'll see in later versions of Fett. But you can see that they're still kind of playing around with designs for the top. The eyes, I haven't seen in any other canon Mandalorian helmets. I could be wrong, but I haven't seen them. I tried to look up if they ever came up with like a meaning for what the eyes were. I saw one, I think on Mandalorian Mercs, that said that the eyes were a sign of like courage in battle or something. Like it was something that was bestowed upon you from your clan of Mandalorians that was like, yeah, like courage in battle. I don't know how canon that is, and I mean, obviously, like I said, it didn't really catch on because they ended up rubbing them off and putting some bunny, ear falling off. And then ended up putting some bunny ears up top, which I also kind of think is cool. I could not find any meaning for the bunny ears, but they're kind of cool. They give it a little bit of personality, and while we don't really see them carry over into Boba Fett's final look, I think it's cool to have these in my collection and be able to show that a lot of times while you're, even after making physical productions of costumes, you're still playing around with stuff and seeing what works and what doesn't, and what, you know, your supervisors and the people who are in charge of your section in the special effects department are actually going to want. And then, of course, I think pretty much everything like this had a final say from George Lucas. So obviously the eyes didn't work, but we're starting to head in the right direction. It looks a lot better than this. So yeah, I think that's it. I'm super excited to have these in my collection, and I cannot wait to get to the next Boba Fett helmet and show you guys what's going to be going on there. So thank you guys for tuning in for the 4th installment of the Fett Lineage Project. I hope you guys enjoyed this one as much as I did. Until next time, I'll see you guys later. Hey there, superstar. You just watched that whole video. I don't know how you did it. I can't listen to me for that long. You deserve something awesome in return for listening to me talk for that long. You can head over to wompratcreations.com and pick yourself up some awesome Womprat merch, just like this Tatooine travel shirt that I'm wearing right now. Looks pretty nice, right? Thanks, guys.
517 to scanner control. 517 to scanner control.
316, report to control.
53 to upper bay door. 53 to upper bay door.